If there was a natural disaster that was imminent and it was headed our way and only a few people knew about it, how much do you think they'd tell us?
They wouldn't.
No. Yeah.
I wouldn't say a goddamn thing because we would go crazy. We'd wind up looting all the Targets.
That's right.
Yeah. First thing,
Target
Walmart.
would be overrun.
Target and Walmart. Smash
I'm going
it
to
the
Kmart.
ground.
I'm going to last Kmart.
Starbucks.
Real quick, did you hear what Elon Musk said on the Full Send podcast a few months ago?
What?
So there's Full Send, the Nelk Boys, awesome guys, great podcast. Elon Musk was on there, it's like 4 months ago, has like 15 million views. It's a 3-hour podcast. And at 2 hours and like 53 minutes, they start talking about cataclysms and ice ages. And Elon Musk, this is out of all things that were discussed on the podcast, in my mind, the most interesting part of it all got zero coverage. It's like nobody talked about it, and it's because it's 2 hours and 50 minutes in. But Elon Musk says a couple things within just a few minutes. He says, if you want to go down a deep, deep rabbit hole, look into ice ages and how often they happen. He goes on to say that...
Well, let's listen to this.
Okay.
Listen to
If you read about ice ages.
Yeah. Really? Like
Yeah,
what?
deep rabbit hole on ice ages.
What's so intriguing about them?
The whole Earth has just been through the whole Earth is just freezing.
Like I said, there's deep rabbit hole on ice ages. Deep rabbit hole.
Where should we
There's
go?
so many. I guess,
Wait, there's so many what?
Wikipedia or Encyclopedia Britannica.
Give us like a
Britannica.
little bit of a tidbit of it.
Yeah, why do you love it?
Why do I love it? I mean, I think it's just interesting
So interesting. That's
that
crazy.
that how much Earth's climate has changed, and even where the magnetically where the poles are has shifted over time. So, anyway, there's also been times where in the past where our galaxy has like collided with another galaxy. That probably threw things for a bit of a loop at the time.
What, is there like a conspiracy when it comes to ice ages or anything like that, or is
Not really, no.
Oh, okay.
When was the last ice age? How long ago was that?
Well, we're technically in sort of an ice age right now, although it depends on what you call an ice age.
What happened to global warming?
Wait, but yeah, how so? Like, what defines an ice age at that point?
Global warming's
Like I
not
said,
like
it's
cool
deep
anymore.
rabbit-
Elon, is it?
it's a deep rabbit hole.
What do you do when you go down a deep rabbit hole, though? Is it YouTube videos, books, or how do you educate
Yeah,
yourself
just
on this?
go all over
Wikipedia?
the internet and books and clicking around the internet, googling Wikipedia, YouTube, whatever. So Twitter can be interesting. I think there was probably something significant that happened at the in the last ice age, because we don't see any evidence of writing. When I say I'm using ice age in the colloquial term, of like when was it very snowy, and where the glaciers came down far, and where summer was short, winter was very long, and that was about 10,000 years ago. So something happened around that ice age, that because we see no writing. No writing before that ice age, and we start to see writing pop up in multiple places on Earth after the most recent colloquially termed ice age. So, yeah. But like I said, there have been times when Earth has been extremely tropical and where it's been a snowball. But these tend to occur over very long periods of time. The global warming thing we're talking about here.
That's about it. He knows. For such a unbelievably smart individual and as rich and powerful as he is, I look at these topics that we're into: cataclysms, Younger Dryas, lost ancient technology.
Magnetic poles.
That's the one thing. I would like to dive into that.
I watched a video on that this morning. The Adam and Eve video.
Oh yeah, the Chan Thomas thing.
Jesus Christ.
That's an interesting one. And
how much of that is agreed upon? That there could be a time where the magnetic poles actually shift.
So this is science. They say that the last one was like 778,000 years ago, and we're like something like 200,000 years overdue. But the Adam and Eve story, the theory of that is that it happens in cycles of 6,500 years, and that it's a 90-degree flip, but 6 days later, or on the 7th day, it corrects itself.
The planet flips, not just
correct. It's a planet flip 90-degree, and that because of it, the Earth essentially does a standstill. The sun will basically stay in the same spot, causing heating like we've never experienced, and that the wind and the waters continue with their momentum. Because essentially the wind travels at approximately 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. So the theory is that when that event happens, it's going to be cataclysmic. And here's the wild thing is that in that document, it says a continental-sized tsunami being 2 miles high. Well, I showed you the Emikusi volcano in Africa in the Sahara, which is at 11,300 feet, that has salt as well as evidence of gastropods, sea life.
That's 2 miles high.
Yes. And I'm like, it would make a lot of sense. Like if you look at the Bible and involving like Revelations and it's saying like
6 days.
6 days, on the seventh day, God rested. In that document, it says 6 days things start simmering down a bit. In the by day 7 things are starting over new.
So what's the science behind this complete reversal of the magnetic poles?
So real quick, this is the part that sets me off about this is that any article you ever read on this, it makes it crystal clear that this will not be apocalyptic. Maybe we'll potentially have some satellite communication issues that could affect our power grid and telecommunication systems, and that's going to be unfortunate. But don't worry, it's not a doomsday. I'm like, okay, first of all, if the grid goes down, that is doomsday. But number two, they don't know what they're talking about because they claim that the geomagnetic pole shift is because of the interior, whether it's the iron core or whatever it is, the molten core does a shift, and because of it, that's why the compass will flip. But I'm like, if you look at the nature of earthquakes, some originate in the crust, others originate in the mantle, in the parts that aren't solid. So I'm like, if you're saying that the interior that is molten does a shift, why on earth would you suggest that it wouldn't cause earthquakes or volcanic activity on the surface? So I feel like every article I ever read on geomagnetic pole shifts, they go out of their way to say, don't worry, it's fine. And I'm like, but yet the evidence shows that it's accelerating. Back in just the 1990s, it was traveling, the North Pole was transitioning at 10 miles a year. Now it's at 40 or almost 40 miles. It's accelerating. And in the Adam and Eve story, it talks about, actually, no, not the Adam and Eve story. There was a documentary on Nova years ago that the evidence shows that when they've studied all other volcanic rock for prior known pole shifts, because keep in mind, there's hundreds that are known. This has happened throughout millions and millions of years. This is mainstream science. The poles do flip. But it's not that the Earth flips over; it's that the inside core does, and so your magnetic compass will flip. Like
what causes it?
So whatever that molten core is, it does a shift inside. It allegedly happens in cycles, and we're long overdue. And when it happens, the other theory is that the Earth's shields will be diminished.
It's 100% something going on. And Petrie, back in the late 1800s, was scratching his head looking at this stuff, and he goes, there must have been a weight of 2 or 3 tons on one. Like he sort of said it was a jeweled tube of bronze that did this. But he was looking at it. He knew a mystery when he saw it, and he couldn't explain it.
What's the speculation? Like, what's the wildest speculation as to how these things were made?
Well, I'm pretty convinced that there was. There's obviously saws and tube drills that are powered by something. Now, I think it may not just be pure friction. There might be ultrasonics involved. One of the whole interesting things I like about this space is it's like, and this has to do with even like the energy stuff that Randall was talking about that he's coming to talk about as well. There are realms of science that sit outside of our understanding. We'll know more tomorrow, in 10 years, in 1,000 years about science. So I think when we look at some of these things in the past, we should be open-minded enough to consider the possibility that some of the answers may sit outside of our current perspective, because our tendency is to look at it all and try and how would we do it?
Right.
How
but
would
does
our
anybody
technology solve
have
this?
wild speculation that you've entertained?
Yeah, I think there's So one of the topics that often gets mentioned here is like ultrasonic drilling. So having it resonate at a frequency that matches the native frequency of the rock and sort of separating the rock more easily. And that's a technology that we're developing. Like we do some ultrasonic drilling like this today with jewelry and stuff, and you literally vibrate, you find the correct vibration, you can put like a little star-shaped bit through a stone. They do it in like small work. I've seen lots of examples. And if you turn off the machine, it's like Excalibur stuck in the stone. You can't get that thing out. Like you need that vibration to go through it. Plasma, you can even go as far as, well, they were softening the stone somehow with some molecular technology. Speculation like that. I would also say that some of these examples of technology and machining extend way up to these massive objects. Like you have 1,000-ton single-piece objects that also exhibit some of these signs of precision engineering. So you might be talking about some truly giant machines that made them, giant columns and statues and things like that.
And what do conventional archaeologists say when they're confronted by all of this data, the pottery, or excuse me, the vases, this stuff that you're looking at here? What do they say?
Well, you either just get a denial and they won't address it, and you get dismissed as just being ridiculous pseudo archaeology fantasy theory type thing, or in the case of the tube drills, for example, they will. And it's a funny story because they will argue that no, it's not spiral. The grooves on that thing aren't spiral, and in fact, in the textbook, this is what Chris Dunn found out. In the textbook where they do try to address the engineering with that tube drill, they took the photo of the tube drill and they just tilted it, just a little bit. So when you look at it on the page, the lines look horizontal. It's literally in the textbook.
Oh, they fucked with it in the textbook?
Yeah.
Why would they do that?
They altered the photo because if you admit that tube has a spiral groove on it, now you're admitting that they're cutting into that granite at a ridiculous rate, and you can't do any of that stuff with any of the primitive tools. It has this flow-on effect that just knocks over this house of cards that says all this stuff was built with primitive technology, and our whole concept of the ancient Egyptians is off. Now, I don't think it's... I think the dynastic Egyptians, they used primitive tools. I think they just inherited a lot of stuff that's potentially a lot older. And the proofs in the puddings with these vases, for example, that stuff, those things disappear from dynastic Egypt after the third, fourth dynasty. They don't make them anymore. They make alabaster vases.
Is that a tool?
What is that?
That's a fantastic example of what I would call an out-of-place artifact. It's a hollow tube of lapis lazuli, which, by the way, there's no quarries for lapis in Egypt. The closest one's probably in Afghanistan. Came from Gebel Tariq, found in a pre-dynastic site. It's hollowed. It's perfectly made. This is a very difficult thing to achieve, even with modern machinery. And it's displayed in a cabinet next to what? Bone and beads. Right?
And what is that? What is that supposed to be? That tube?
It's something decorative, I assume. It has a gold sheath, but it's a hollow tube. I actually have pictures of it from the end on, not probably in the ones you have, Jamie, but yeah, hollow tube. It's an out-of-place artifact. Like these things from hard stone, and these are more examples. Rock crystal, obsidian gourds and vases that show just perfect, just very high degrees of sophistication.
You should mention the
pre-dynastic,
the statue faces and the symmetry. How can you possibly do that by hand? This will wow you.
Yeah. So there's a whole category of aspects to the discussion around ancient technology, right? And I have to be kind of careful about what you say, oh, it is or it isn't, because in reality, we really haven't analysed that many artifacts. This vase work that we've done, first one we've actually taken a look at. That core, that's the first one and the only one that's really been analysed. So I characterise something that's beyond the capabilities of these primitive ancient civilizations as being, okay, machining marks, tool marks, like these giant circular saws, tube drills, precision, and there's elements to precision, and one of those is symmetry. And there's been some interesting studies done on the faces of giant statues. One in particular is the face of Ramses. There's a statue at Luxor. They've since put the head back up. It's up now 30 feet in the air on top of the statue, but it used to be on the ground. And again, Chris Dunn was real seminal in this. He went and took a photo, like bang on, like very front on, and then what he did was you take a copy of that photo, you make it 50% transparent, make the original 50% transparent, you take one and you flip it like on that horizontal axis, then you overlay them, right? So you would see like the left to right, it's like overlaying the left side on the right side, and it's perfect. It's this face here, but I wonder if you can find the picture of Chris Dunn. That's actually
there's your video right there.
Video's there as well, where I get into it.
Website, but that's not that picture you're asking for.
No, it's similar, but it shows other aspects of, the same radius of tool being used to cut. But what's interesting about the symmetry, it's perfectly symmetrical, left to right. Now, this isn't a feature in humans. No human is perfectly symmetrical, different nostrils, different eyeballs. It's also not something that is done in artwork. So, people often say, well, Michelangelo, he carved David. It's a beautiful statue. I've seen it's incredible, but it's human. It's not symmetrical. Symmetrical is, you can't achieve that degree of symmetry just by eyeballing it and doing it by hand. And it's also something that's not really human. I think some of these statues almost look a bit inhuman because of that symmetry when they're up there and they're staring at you, because it's mind-blowing to actually go and look at them. But it's the other aspect is the most efficient way to create that would be to say, well, if you were going to design it in a computer, it's like, well, I'm going to create half this face in a program and map it out, and then I'm just going to reverse it and say, well, that's the other half. It's literally the most efficient way to do it. And that's kind of what we're seeing in some of these statues.